pause, the pregnant pause.
It puts us in a good
Hello, welcome to
talking over each other and starting the show on time.
Woo! Boom!
Boom.
All right, come on. What was that? All right, 3, 2.
Boom!
Okay, there we go.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the show. Welcome back to another episode of Action Movie Anatomy on the Popcorn Talk Network.
You can't say that. We literally are going to get sued. We have to take this down now.
Yeah,
there's several people that are going to be after
several
us.
people that are upset about what I just did.
I am so excited to talk about this movie. Someone, DT Durr here. It is fantastic, especially on rewatch. It is. Big time salute to you. Action movie anatomy.
Hey, Flipper.
Hey. Flipper?
Yeah, call sign. Call sign. Isn't he call sign Flipper? Did I just make that up?
Philip.
Philip.
How you feeling?
Isn't that correct?
I don't know.
I think it is.
I hope so.
I think I just remembered the call sign.
I hope it is.
Philip, if that's not your call sign and I just misremembered it, I am so sorry.
Flipper. I hope it is. Also, I think a lot of the times when I hear call signs that we haven't said in a long time, I always am like, we're such idiots. Like, we're jackasses if we actually did that. And a lot of the time we did.
Got us through the pandemic, man. It did.
It barely did. It really did. God, it shows you what I had to look forward to in the pandemic. Just dreaming about people's names.
I'm happy to see you, Philip. It's been a little while.
Yeah, it's been a long time. It's great to see you. Anyway, call sign Kluber.
Oh, that's another good one. Kluber.
Absolute to you, Liam. Great to see you, man. It's been a long time. Yeah, I mean, so anyway, all jokes aside, this is a very serious episode of Action Movie Anatomy.
It is. It is.
We are very excited to talk about the Best Picture winner from this year. First, we have to get through a couple orders of business.
Couple orders of business.
Oh, God. I clicked the wrong one.
Shout out to our founding sponsors. They were here with us 3 years ago when we launched this show on the action guys here on Action Industries. Our 5-star generals, Paul Denuzio, John Getz. Should we speak in that? Should we speak in that radio podcast voice? Paul Denuzio, John Getz, Jake Yakoveta, Mac Ryan.
Don't forget Alex and Lucas Shashek, who were once commanders and chiefs.
And, of course, AJ Lancaster. I'm not sure who that is, but his name is on the list.
It's been on the list for years. Big time salute to you.
Big time salute to you. Of course, next up in the rotation, we've got Mike Deacon and Bethany Curl.
On deck, Liam Gilpin.
Also known as call sign Kluber.
Not to be confused with Clubber Lang, the actual villain from Rocky III, Luke Marshall Haynes. Andrew Hayes, Danny Joyce, Kelsey Kirkland, Suri, Laman Maki.
Whoa, slow down there, shooter. You're going a little fast.
I felt like a ball rolling downhill. A rock, if you will.
So dumb. Jeremiah Morris, John Paris, John Patterson, Eric Ritz, Oscar Romo, and Cody Seal. Big time salute to you guys. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Oh, man.
I enjoyed it.
It's good to be back.
It's good to be back.
It's good to be back. So,
everyone left. Everyone left. This is not a Moonfall AMA. I wish. Oh, Bethany is officially Deacon now.
All right. Sweaty balls. There you go, Kelly. It's great.
Yeah, change. What's sweaty balls?
That's the old Alec Baldwin sketch.
From SNL?
Yeah, well, he's Pete Schwetty, and he has a line of delicacies for the holidays. My name is Pete Schwetty. Nobody can resist my sweaty balls. Oh, Pete, they're so tender. It's like that's the whole sketch.
It's like early 2000s
or late 90s, maybe.
It's funny what we thought was just funny back then.
Yeah,
it's just like
it's still funny to me now.
It still is. It still is. Yeah, classic. Look at these two. Anyway, so we're excited to talk about We're excited to talk about Everything Everywhere All at Once. You and I had very similar experiences, even though I believe our first time viewing were very different. The first time I saw it, I bought it at home on HBO or on Prime, and I don't think I could rent it. I don't think I could rent it. I think I had to buy it for like $25 or something like that. But I was like, I know I'm gonna watch this movie numerous times. First time viewing,
yeah,
I have to say, I was like medium on it. Like I felt like the whole time I was trying to figure the movie out, and then I think it just kind of went over my head. But then I watched it again recently when my family was in town, and it like I loved it. It like destroyed me in the best way possible. And since then, I think I've watched it 2.5 more times.
Yeah.
So I know we're gonna get into the actual AMA and the rules and all that, but I just wanted to give a little bit of a precursor here because You and I had seen it before the Oscars. I'd seen it again before the Oscars. We wanted to cover it on the show because of the Oscars, and I think our second plus viewings were very similar in that sense. But the first time around, it was also the same, right?
Yeah, well, my first time I was watching it on an airplane, and which, generally speaking, I think this is common, right? Airplane watching is more emotional, but it's also, I don't know, I think this is like the pressure. People are more inclined to cry on airplanes. I'm not sure why that is.
Really?
Yeah, you don't know this?
I just cry a lot now.
I just cry.
I really do. I'm so sensitive.
I cry on airplanes a lot.
Dude, I almost teared up during Talladega Nights.
This is amazing.
Like seriously.
You're like the scene from Dumb and Dumber when they're watching the banking commercial.
Yeah,
they're wiping their.
It was Amy Adams' monologue.
Yeah,
she's got so much conviction.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I watched this on an airplane, and as you know, I travel a lot, as you guys know. So they ply me with liquor on airplanes, and it's because it's all included. I was a little inebriated when I watched this film the first time.
What?
Inebriated. When I first watched this movie, and so I think I was trying to watch, a tiny screen.
So you were buzzed on a plane.
Yeah, and the thing that I really noticed was at the end of the movie this time, it made me question how close I was paying attention to the end of the movie on the airplane, because I felt like a lot of the vibe that sticks the landing. Like, the thing about this movie that's so important is that I think the whole middle section of the movie is so wild.
Yeah.
You have to really have that final 20 for this movie to stick the landing. And if you get tired or you stop paying as close of attention and you're just not really watching that final 20, like you're waiting for the credits, the movie seems a bit jumbled. It doesn't seem bad. It just seems confusing and a little hard to follow.
I don't know if a movie has ever needed to stick a landing more than Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Exactly.
Maybe. So that could be a good thesis.
So that was definitely for me the experience. I could tell it was great. Like there's so much going on in this movie. Whether the performances, just the inventiveness of it, to even make this movie.
That's a good way to put it. I could tell it was great, but I felt like I'd missed something.
Yeah.
I felt like I was too stupid, or I don't know. I knew I had missed something, though, which was nice. I didn't come out of it going... Because there was still so much I still appreciated the first time. I didn't come out of it going, wow, that was overrated. I came out of it going, like, what was wrong with... Why? What? It was truly it's not me, it's you situation. So, Ben, Action Movie Anatomy, it's a show that we started doing a long time ago, back in our 20s.
Our younger years.
Many seasons ago. And that show had rules that movies had to abide by. We'll see if EEAAO fits in.
Was that an abbreviation for something?
Is it E?
I know what you were doing.
Just go.
The films on this list adhere to 4 basic rules. Rule number 1, the hero always plays by their own rules. Now, what's really interesting about this movie is, in the end, and very sort of akin to Neo in The Matrix, she is the hero, and she definitely does play by her own rules, but in the end, to be able to, like, do this and win, sort of. Mm-hmm. But it's weird, because in some ways, I kind of feel like, actually... her husband is sort of the hero. Throughout a lot of this movie, he feels like the hero to me while I'm watching it.
Yeah. I mean, I think it has to be Michelle at the end of the day, because she's like the one that invented it, and she's the one that kind of says everything. Does she play by her own rules? I guess like you could probably like do a little bit of mental gymnastics to get there and say that she does, because it's like at the end of the day she created it and she kind of saves everything. The whole time you were talking, you referenced The Matrix, and I was trying to make some dumb joke about it. Like, what's The Matrix? Because the other day I read this article of someone that reviewed Tetris. I don't know if you saw this on Twitter.
No.
And they were like, while I've never heard of the game that the movie is inspired by, I found it to be very good. And I was like, who has not heard of Tetris?
That's crazy.
Yeah, anyway, I don't know why that happened to me. But anyways, let's just say yes. Let's just say yes for our sake. Actually, what do you guys think? What do you guys think in the chat? Yeah, Evelyn is the hero. Ultimately, yeah. So we'll agree that Evelyn is the hero, but does she play by her own rules? Let us know as we move on to rule number 2, Ben.
Yeah, just to add to that, the last point is like so much of the premise behind this movie, like the whole entire idea when the movie is over, is that like it almost doesn't matter. Like none of us are playing by our own rules, because who the fuck invented the rules and who cares? Like We're all just like living our small life, and like we have to appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's almost like the antithesis of an action hero movie. In the end, that's the
For
message.
sure. I mean, yeah, that's like a huge part of it.
Yeah.
Right? So anyway, rule number 2.
Rule number 2: the hero and the villain are always the smartest beings, things, people, dinosaurs, what have you, in the room.
The villain definitely is.
Yeah. Yep.
You know.
Yeah. It's like the same thing,
it's the
basically.
same-
We're talking
literally,
yourself
and
into the same.
Yeah,
sort
because
of.
Jobu Tupaki technically is.
Yeah. Yep.
And yeah, so okay. 3 again.
Movie is
I
driven
mean,
by.
she works for whatever the government that invented that thing. I think.
Yeah. Movies driven by police, military, political, mercenary figure. Could be the man or work for the man. Yeah, I guess so.
It would make sense that this movie would kind of fit all the rules and not at all at the same time.
Yes, I would agree.
Hey, you guys! Salute!
24601. Nice to hear from you, TJ. It's
See you, man. I hope you're doing well.
Yeah.
All right, and then rule number 4. There's an explosion.
Minimum of 1 explosion. There are explosions.
There
in
are
this
explosions
movie.
in this movie
Yeah.
of emotion.
Yes. Nice.
I feel like that's more. I think I'd probably go explosion of emotion over fist pump today.
Yeah, I think there's enough of
both.
both.
We can do both.
Yeah, yes.
That's where I'm at.
So yeah, I think the thing we like to start with before we get into the really exciting stuff is
if there was an action, like an action industries convention. Someone the Tay that would happen. They'd be like, oh, that's 24601. Wow. Pretty sweet. Pretty sweet. Okay. All right. So.
We start the show off with this thing called thesis statement. It's kind of your biggest, boldest idea, your thought about the movie, rooted in hyperbole almost. The first, the last, the best, the only, the greatest, the worst, whatever. We try to not keep it vague, or loose. And I'm going to just jump in first with this because I thought a lot about this all throughout the film and then afterwards. I think this is perhaps the most one-of-one performance I can ever remember watching from a movie star. And Michelle Yeoh playing this character in this movie. And I think it's because there's a lot of different reasons why. I think, number one, she's incredible. There's a lot of incredible actresses and actors. And so there are a lot of people that could have played just the emotional beats of this movie. It's not that she's better than other actors I've seen, because there are lots of great actors. But it's something about the fact that, like, there's the martial arts aspect, which is natural to her. It's part of her career. There's the movie star meta sort of portion of the movie that's so important. And she's cast in that kind of as herself in many ways. Like that's sort of the role she's playing that you're watching. She's one of the only recognizable like Asian actresses in America of this level. Like there's almost none that have the pedigree she has. She's an actual box office name. Like people know who she is. She matters in that way to American audiences. So when she wins the Oscar for this, it's like, oh, Michelle Yeoh, she's a national treasure. We all know her.
Right.
So I think that all of those things sort of together create what feels like if they had made this movie with anyone else, they would have had to rewrite the movie significantly. I don't think you would have been able to have this movie work this way. There's so much of like Asian culture in this movie.
Yeah.
So if it's not an Asian actor or actress, the movie's very different. And I just think that if you're going to make it a movie with an actress who's doing what she's doing, there's basically zero other people I can think of that could have done it. Which is why I think it's a true one-of-one performance.
Yeah, and she wins the Oscar for it. She's incredible. She gets to do all the things that she said that she's been very good at her entire career, but has never had the opportunity to do. She feels like she's been, marginalized and used for only a couple things, other than being the Asian mom, like you said, the martial arts. But it's like she never got to be funny. She never got to be a love interest. She never got to be a leading lady in a romance or a rom-com. Like those things didn't really happen for her the way that you'd think they would for someone that is, like you said, like truly like an A-list actress.
Yeah.
In that sense of like, for 30 years, she's been on screens in America, like in prominent parts. So I agree. I think it's a great thesis. And the more that I thought about it, it's so hard because I feel like almost all of my thesis statements, while I want them to all be positive, I think there's the danger of marginalizing other performances or other films. And that's not my intention at all. So after thinking about it for a while, I think what I have to say is my thesis statement is, for me personally, I think that this is the most important film for Asian Americans that has been made to date. And, again, the first thing I want to say is it's not to marginalize the other movies that I think are so important, right? Like, I think the ones that pop into mind for Asian Americans specifically, the ones that we talked about are, like The Joy Luck Club, right? Crazy Rich Asians. You talk about like Parasite, even though that's not really for Asian Americans. That's like Koreans being kind of crazy Koreans that we've been making fucked up movies that people love for a long time. Like Old Boy was really popular. Train to Busan was really, really popular. The Farewell is a really great movie. And I think it's a super important movie, and it's really well done. And of course, Shang-Chi, right? Like Asian superheroes. Like we did it. We landed. But when you look at this movie, I think what I love so much about it is not only did it win 7 awards that I think it should have won all those awards. I think the only thing is that I wish that like Stephanie Hsu could have also won an award, because I think her performance in this movie is also kind of one of one. Like she perfectly encapsulates being a millennial Asian daughter, and just the same way that The Wedding Banquet. Wow, I haven't seen that. Just the same way that Michelle does a perfect job of encapsulating what it is to be a daughter to a father of that generation that her dad comes from. So the reason that I say this is just because, it wins all these awards, and it also just shows like this movie is crazy. And it's also perfect for Asian Americans because like I know that my mom would watch this movie and she would just think it was so crazy and weird. Yeah. And I want to watch it with her a couple times, like explain it to her. And that's also part of like the uncomfortability of like Asians don't like to be like bizarre and all out there and do all these wild things and crazy makeup. So there's that part of it. The other part of it though is that like this is just about a family that's just going through it, and they're struggling with all the things that families struggle with: their identity, their relationship with each other, their bills, their relationship with each other as mother and daughter, or parent and child, and also with one another, and also to their parents. And there's so much about it, but the movie's not about being Asian. They just happen to be Asian, which is why like if you did grow up in an Asian household, like when the movie goes to their apartment and there's like table with all that shit on it, all the paperwork.
Yeah.
At least in my experience, every Asian household had that. We had like a really nice big dining table that we never ate at. We always just ate in the kitchen, like at our little kitchen bar. That table was always covered with my mom's paperwork, and it was mainly all tax shit, so just like in this movie.
That's so
actually
interesting.
Exact same thing at her house, right? The way that they dress, the things that they say, talking about getting fat, you don't call even though it's free. Like so much about this movie is perfectly Asian American without it being a movie just about Asians.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of what we were talking about a second ago. It's like it's the whole conversation when people talk about a movie that's like, it's a movie about a black superhero. It's like, no, it's a movie about a superhero who is black. Mm-hmm. And it's like, it's that thing. You brought up this really interesting point talking about James Hong's character and, sort of how he represents sort of an archetype of an Asian father.
Yeah.
And how in America, we are used to there being that guy, the shitty, like, wasn't their dad. It's like you just watched Talladega Nights.
I was telling you, I just watched Talladega Nights the day before I rewatched Everything Everywhere. And it was like, it's so funny because Reese Bobby, the alcoholic, got, knocked up young, bailed, and wanted to go live like that life that you missed out on.
Gary Cole, great head of hair.
Yeah, incredible. He's so good in that movie too. But like, that's like the stereotype, the typical dad that we've been shown in American films. It's like one of a few, right? Because Waymond is also another typical Asian dad that they're like almost too nice, too quiet one that doesn't say anything, doesn't speak up for himself, right? So they show all these different archetypes that we have in different versions. But yeah, it's just funny because it's like, it's not just showing like an Asian grandpa that's like disapproving. It's like, no, that's just showing a dad. That dad in Asian culture, like they're usually pretty hard to make happy. They usually don't talk that much. Of that generation, especially, like they a lot of them like didn't learn English out of principle, or don't speak it out of principle. So there's just so much about this. And again, not to take away from those other movies, but watching this, and I think again to show you can have a movie that is so out there and is so bizarre, but is really all just about relationships, that is filled with Asian people and filled with Asian culture, that's not about being Asian, and win all these awards. And
I think one thing that is super cool in this conversation, and I think some of you probably listening already thought this, but just to like acknowledge it, is that when we talk about the progressiveness of the stuff that gets made anymore, like the films and television shows that get made, most of those most important movies you just mentioned came out in the last 5 years. Yeah. 2 of them won Best Picture at the Oscars.
Right.
One of them was an actual box office smash, like a huge, huge hit. Crazy Rich Asians, also massive, massive hit. Like, Those are all recent. They're all in the last 5 years. So I think it's it's obviously a drop in the bucket compared to the number of movies that are not starring largely Asian casts. But I do think it's a pretty cool thing for us to be talking about this movie and for that thesis to reflect so much of that recently. Minari was another like a big one recently.
Yeah. And the other thing too is that like, and because of what Kaylee Vaughn is saying here, is that like, also that Asian American culture is just American culture being Asian. That so many people struggle with the exact same things that you're talking about. Like in my family, there's the same issues that you're talking about of people trying to figure out their identities, or people trying to be okay with people in their identities. And it's just so universal, which I think is so cool about this movie, because as we move on through the show, as we get into Fist Pump Moment, which is like where some of that crazy universe stuff comes in, it's just fun because it's not just about those little relationships. This movie also gets like gigantic and crazy and wild.
Yeah, so Fist Bump Moment is that moment you're watching the movie, something happens, and you kind of look around, and you're like, are you seeing this right now? I'm so hyped, I get to watch the rest of this movie. This is crazy. Yeah. You want to call your buddy and be like, dude, I'm watching this movie, and you have to go to like 12 minutes in because this crazy thing happens. This movie is an overwhelming smorgasbord of them. I almost like can't really pick like a single one because it keeps jumping from moment to moment.
Yeah.
In like...
And they're so different. The fist bumps are all so different. TJ, I completely agree with you. It's no disrespect to either of them. I love how Michelle spoke Cantonese to her dad and Mandarin to her husband, and Wayman rarely spoke to her father, Lily, my life. Yeah, it's there's a similar relationship in Ashley's family as well. So fist pump moment. Yeah, do you want to go first? Or do you want me to go first, or do you want to kind of go through a few?
We can go. Why don't we go with a couple of each? And I think you mentioned explosion of emotion, emotional explosion, whatever.
Yeah.
I think for me, they're kind of similar in this movie. The most emotional moments were in many ways the ones that I felt the most engaged.
Yeah.
Because the fighting was really badass and it's done really very well, and there's a
Yeah.
lot of it. But I also don't think I can pick one fight out that stands above any of the emotional stuff this movie's doing.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, probably the whole entire sequence that Waymond has in the movie star reality. I pretty much actually from the second that she sees him, that's almost like a fist pump when she's just walking up the steps and starts talking to him and they're interacting, and you're like, of course he would be in this reality. And of course she would be a movie star and this conversation would start this way. And like, it's exciting because you like these characters at that point in the movie so much, and you're excited you're going to get this version of them. And he's embodying a different energy at that point. He's dressed up. I think for me, that as soon as it starts, that to me is like, I'm so happy I get this version of this story. I can't wait to watch this.
Cool that they pull footage from her life,
yeah,
right? To like kind of lead you into it and show you. It's like, wow, it's like it's inspiring because you're like, wow, I'm glad the movie's going there. But then also because you're like, wow, look at like what she's done in her life. Like look what she made out of this universe for her. For me, I have so many. Like the fanny pack thing, I'd like kind of heard rumblings about online.
Yeah.
And when I finally saw it happen, I was really happy. I kind of had a little mini fist pump because I was like, it is actually really sick.
Like whoop so much people's ass with a fanny pack.
So sweet, and it's also like the violence is like just good enough. I know I definitely had a fist pump when Stephanie Hsu pile drives that dude and kills him.
Yeah.
Like that is so. I was like, damn, like that is an action movie fist pump for sure. It's gnarly. But the end, like the last 30 minutes of this movie, I'm basically just kind of like crying the whole time.
Yeah.
It just hits me in the heart every single time, from like the moments with the grandfather, her and Waymond in every reality. Like he's so good in this movie. It's unbelievable. Even just like when he gets stabbed and he's just like, why? Like even that moment, it's just like it kills me. His whole entire monologue out in the rain in the movie star universe is just wonderful. But yeah, Michelle and Stephanie like having that conversation out in the parking lot, kind of like that climax of everything. And it's just like, they're two powerhouses like acting out there.
Yeah.
Like, it really, like you talk about like actors acting, you watch that scene, you're just like, oh my god, it's so good, it's so real, you could feel it, and like the words, everything about it. So like that for me, like when I was watching it, I'm just like, yeah, every single time this is just like, It's like the end of Warrior for me.
Yeah,
it just like it comes together perfectly.
I was crying a lot towards the end of the movie, and definitely that sequence. And she says, you have to let me go. She says, okay. She gets in the car, and then she's like, wait. And then she gives that monologue, and she's like, what? You could be anywhere. Why would you want to be here with me? And she gives the whole thing about like, we just get a few specks of time. God, when she says we only get a few specks of time thing, and you just realize that's why this movie, I think, is so incredible. And I think it's ultimately why it wins Best Picture. There's a lot of things going on in this movie that are impressive. The filmmaking, the writing, the performances. But it's the fact that in the end, the concept of the movie is nothing matters.
Yeah.
Right?
They say it so many times, which is why it's so good throughout it, because, the first time I kept trying to make everything in the movie matter so much. I was trying to figure it out the whole time. And that's why it just went right over my head, because they even keep telling you in the movie, just to remind you, even though you don't know, it's so meta because the movie's meta, but it's like, none of this shit matters.
Yeah.
It's only about these like 5 people and their relationships with each other and how that affects everything and how every small decision we make along the way, it does matter. It ultimately leads to these things that are so incredible and so important, which is why the bagel, I think, is so funny because it started as like a placeholder. They didn't know what it was. But it's like, the idea is basically like, if you throw everything on a bagel, then there's nothing left. So then what else is there to do?
Yeah.
So it's like, if you've seen everything in the universe, if you've done all of that and there's nothing left to see, then none of it matters. None of it's special then. So then that's basically why Stephanie Hsu's character is like, well, that's the other cool thing when you talk about action movies, is the action movies, so much of it about is like the bad guy that is trying to destroy the world and stopping them, right? Which is, again, why when we mentioned that this is the opposite of an action movie, because you realize at the end of the movie, it's been a MacGuffin. The Everything Bagel is actually about her being depressed and wanting to destroy herself.
Yeah.
And her relationships with everything else. It's not about a bad guy trying to destroy the world, which is another thing about it that just blows my mind. So much about this movie is so intelligent.
Yeah, well, I think there's a big conversation. I mean, Kaylee says here in the chat, this is a film that'll be great to revisit at different eras of your life. And I think it's very true. You and I both now in our, early going into mid-30s, we're both kind of having this conversation about what we've accomplished and what we still want. Like where are we deriving our happiness from? It's like a constant topic we keep going back to. And this movie, when it gets to the end and you see like all this craziness that was happening, and ultimately it's this flawed thing they're living, and they're just trying to connect to the few most important things to them. I think that's why it speaks to so many people and why it's such a well-told story, because who isn't dealing with that?
Yeah.
What I'm talking about. That's
And
everybody.
What do we do? What did we do in life? What did we miss out on? What could have been? And it's like, I've been telling you, like, so much of my life this year, I feel like I've been trying to live more in the present and trying to be more grateful for what I have. And I think that this movie also is just so much about that, right? Like, just being grateful for what you have around you. And yeah, I don't know, man. Watching this movie, it just makes me like feel good.
Yeah.
A movie that's literally just about like life and how hard it is and the decisions we make and what could have been, but then ultimately it's just like to be kind to one another and kind of be grateful for what we have.
I think I will throw in one other fist pump. It's a less emotional one. It's a clear other direction. It's this crazy slow-mo sequence where the security guard is jumping in and he lands on the Otter of the Year thing, and then he's slow-mo jump kicking across the room, and she grabs the thing out of his ass
while he grabbed the other one out of the other ass.
Yes, and she double grabs the ass things. It's just like the humor and absurdity in this movie, from the hot dog fingers to like Raccacoonie to just like it's like an endless string of like, this is also when fucking Stephanie Hsu shows up and she's like whips the dude's ass with 2 dildos.
Dude, okay, I gotta say that when I watched this with my 2 sisters, very uncomfortable in that moment because they're also like pretty conservative compared to me. But like today when I was watching it, I laughed out loud because she's like, my joy is Jojo Chewbacca or whatever, like in that moment, and then it cuts back to her with the 2 dildos and the blood, and she has like the most like happy, like it's me, your daughter look on her face, like pleased with herself. laugh out loud. Like the timing of everyone. Yeah, the Rakakuni monologue delivery from Michelle, like
So
when she's trying to
funny.
decide like who it is and what's going on, or like trying to explain it to them is just it's incredible. It's so dumb and incredible.
Yeah, so that for me that was the other one when I was watching. That was like a real like a real fist bump. Just 'cause, like, what is this movie? Like, this
Yeah.
just won Best Picture at the Academy Awards, and she's fighting with penis swords.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that I literally wrote that down today. Trying to think if there's anything else that like I wanted to talk about. Anyway, we can keep moving maybe on to okay, so one thing I was thinking about and reading about online, there was a couple other versions of this movie that could have happened. So the first one was that Jackie Chan was supposed to be the lead, and it was supposed to be more about him. And I don't know if Michelle Yeoh was supposed to be the wife in that version or not. But then I think they ultimately decided that a story about like the wife was more relatable to people for some reason. I'm not sure exactly. I don't know what that script looked like. Could this movie have ever been that way? And like, would it have been anything even close? And then the second one was Awkwafina was supposed to be Stephanie Hsu, but then she pulled out because of scheduling conflicts.
Interesting.
Now, while I thought Awkwafina did a good job in The Farewell, what would that version have looked like, and do you think it would have worked? Would any of those versions, mix or match anything, pick and choose what you want, does anything even come close? Is there any part of it that you wish you could have seen?
I like Awkwafina a great deal, but I feel I'm too attached to her as a personality at this point and her like brand of comedy and stuff. I think I might have... This movie's absurd enough. I think I might have been taken out too much.
Yeah.
I think I would have recognized that it was her maybe in those moments. I think part of the fact that I didn't really know who Stephanie Hsu was is what makes her so believable as that character. The Jackie Chan version of the movie works, but it's a different movie entirely. I don't think it's... I mean, it has a lot of the same elements probably, and he's one of the only people you could possibly think of who could do it if they wanted to flip the roles like that.
Right.
Because he's, for the same reasons we just talked about with Michelle Yeoh being a one of one, he's... You know, there's a couple actors who have that kind of gravitas and can actually act. Jackie Chan can do it. He would be amazing if that version got made. But I also think then it feels a lot more like a traditional badass fighting dude movie. Whereas I think her doing it, it's just so much more interesting to me.
Yeah.
I just find it a lot more interesting. I think it would have just been a worse movie.
Yeah, I agree. I think I agree with everything. Like, I really love both of them. I mean, TJ says right here, after seeing the movie, I think those possible films would have been inferior to this one, and that's coming from someone that would take a bullet for Jackie Chan.
Yeah.
Michelle's a much better actor, in quotes, than
Yeah.
Jackie Chan. I mean, we don't know that. I mean, sorry. Maybe in your opinion you do know that, but I also feel like she didn't get the opportunity until this movie to show us how good she was, and maybe he has had...
Have you seen The Foreigner?
I was going to say, maybe he's had more opportunities to show his comedy, but in like a slapsticky type of way. I don't disagree with you at all. I just wonder if he were given an opportunity like this, would he be able to shine the same way that she did? But I think that's a good point. Yeah, I agree. I don't think there's really... Just a little bit about the supporting actress conversation.
Yeah,
Just a little bit, like... I do think Kelly W. says the Jackie Chan version works, but it's a different movie and probably gets overlooked because people assume it's another Jackie Chan movie. Also, yeah, and then probably I feel like there would have been some sort of you would have felt a little more obligated to have maybe more action with him and less with other people. But anyway, Jamie Lee Curtis wins the Oscar for this movie. The biggest conversation out there, I think, is the Angela Bassett one, and then like someone else said in the chat, the biggest one for me is that it's the Stephanie Hsu one. I actually think what Stephanie Hsu did, big time salute to you, TJ. I think it popped up. All right. Bong rips, smoke him if you got him, says TJ. Call sign 24601. No way the Jackie Chan film doesn't work, but yeah, it's definitely a different movie. Yeah, I don't know if it doesn't work, but anyway. Stephanie Hsu's performance in this movie is like astounding. It's like breathtaking. And I think it's so much more layered and juicy and difficult to pull off, I believe, than Jamie Lee Curtis's role. But I don't want to take away what she did. I also don't I think Jamie Lee Curtis was perfectly cast in this. And don't get me wrong, I'm happy she won the Oscar, and I'm glad that she got one in her career. I think she's perfectly cast in this, but I do wonder if someone else could have played her role and also been wonderful. I don't think anyone else could have done what Stephanie Shu did. I don't think Awkwafina could have done what she did. There's this level of, like you said, not knowing who she is, but also her performance.
Yeah.
The things she does in this performance are kind of like the same level of what we saw when Heath Ledger did the Joker.
Yeah.
Like, this is just like an Asian daughter who has ended up being a villain in a movie. The amount of depth she brings to it is incredible.
Yeah, I liked her performance a great deal. I think she was amazing. And if I was personally voting for, let's just say, the three of those actresses, I would vote for her. That's who I think, like, I don't know that it's by like a chasm, but I would have voted for her. She would have been my pick. And I'm not even necessarily because I 100% agree. I don't disagree. I'm just trying to like do the math in my head. But I think there's more because like I like Jamie Lee Curtis in this movie a lot. She's great. She does a really great job. And as you said, the casting is really the thing that's...
When they're smoking the vape on the porch, like,
yeah.
I love that. I love that they become friends. When she's like in that evil Thetaverse or whatever, like she's incredible.
But she's getting it as like more of the career achievement in the great movie than she's getting it for the performance. And that happens a lot. We see it at the Oscars all the time.
Yeah, that's what PLD says here. And exactly. I'm not against it either. Exactly.
But the thing that's tough about that one is then you go, okay, well, if we're talking career achievements and that's why she's getting it, then why didn't Angela Bassett get it? Because ultimately, who do I think has turned in more incredible performances in their career? It's definitely Angela Bassett. So that's the part about it that sometimes, and this is just, we've talked about this many, many times, sometimes being the name in the big movie gets you the award. It just happens sometimes. If you go back to like 2010 and you think about like Colin Firth in The King's Speech, he's incredibly good in that movie, but he wins more on the back of the fact that he is the lead actor in the Best Picture winning movie than the fact that people talk about Colin Firth was like transcendent in the role. And it happens a lot. It happens very often that the lead actor in the big movie gets the Oscar. And I just think that that's sort of what happened here. I think, in fact, every single person who's in the chat is agreeing.
Yeah.
If you watch the movie, you would just agree she deserved it. But yeah, so
yeah, I mean, she's just everything she does in the moments with her with Michelle Yeoh at the end and throughout, and like every version of her in every universe, the delivery of those monologues, her comedy, like she is just excellent all throughout. Actually, yeah. Anyway, so moving on through the show, I know that there's not a lot of time left. We're happy to talk to you guys about anything that you guys want to bring up about, but I know that there's obviously a few more things that we need to hit. I think every Oscar in this movie is deserved. Do you have any favorite line that pops in your head?
We've talked about a few of them already, because I think that a lot of what I love about this movie, it's the emotional moments, and those are driven by the lines. I think the stuff at the end, the whole entire interaction, but specifically, I love when Evelyn says wait, and then she gets her out of the car and she starts saying, like, she starts throwing the stuff like, and you are getting fat and you only call me when you need something, and why would I want to be here with you? Like the way that she sets up that monologue, that whole sequence is amazing. I do really love the Ke Quan line where he says at the end of the movie star thing, like, you've broken my heart, yet again.
Yeah.
But I would have loved to live a reality where we do laundry together. I can't remember the exact line.
So even though you broke my heart yet again, I wanted to say in another life, I would have really liked just doing laundry and taxes with you.
That line, I teared up when he says that line. That line, it like really gets me. I love that reality. It's my favorite of the realities in the movie, and I love that version of him so much because of the contrast that it sets, and just because everything that's happening as he leads up. Wait, be sure before you say it. All that stuff that he's doing. And oh god, it's so fucking heartbreaking too. Just before she sees him, when she first sees herself in the car, and she's like, "I should have listened to my father.
Yeah,
I shouldn't have gone with you.
Yep, all that.
I could have been so happy."
And then it like cuts to them, like as she's realizing, God, because when it gets to the point of her like realizing that her face, when it's like the spectrum of colors while he's giving that monologue, and it cuts to her looking at him, like that love that she has for her husband in that moment, that like looking at like the greatest thing in the universe, is so incredibly well edited with his monologue of him saying all those things like, well, you think you're a fighter, I'm a fighter too, and then it ends with that, like just wanting to do laundry and taxes. It kills me every single time. It kills me. And then with what she says, at the end of her thing with Stephanie, or in the parking lot, and she says, "No matter what, I still want to be here with you. I will always want to be here with you." Oh, it just like, because there's so many people that you could feel that way for, but the way that a mother feels that way for their child, even though they don't know what to say and they don't know how to say it. Because earlier, even in the movie, when Stephanie, she was like, "I'm sorry, I just really, out of all the things, like you're still hung up that I like girls in this universe." It's just like the mother's love, like coming from, you know, someone that had a mom who also English was their second language. It's like they just don't know how to say what they want to say a lot of the time. And also from their culture, like that people that were born in the, I mean, before my mom was born, but like in the 40s and 50s and 60s in Korea, also it's like those people don't express themselves very well emotionally. That's just not an Asian culture. Same thing with, you know, this is obviously Chinese culture, Japanese culture. It's all very similar in that sense. So like when she gets to do that, the hug at the end, it's so good. It's like that hug that they have together with the music. Oh,
I also really do love. It's funny because it sets up the whole like next scene we're talking about. But when she has the moment when she's talking to James Hong and she says, you know, "I'm not going to do to her what you did to me," basically.
Yeah.
And I don't need you to be proud of me because I'm finally proud of myself. Mm-hmm. I started crying when she says it. You don't realize it's setting up for a bait and switch to set up the next scene. Mm-hmm. But even so, when she says it, like there's just some stuff that is universal. There are themes in movies that are universal, and it's like tends to come down to like it's all just about love is like what the most powerful ones usually are.
Yeah.
It's like you think about like a lot of our favorite movies and like what's the concept of Interstellar? It's like love is the most powerful thing in the world.
Yeah.
It's like a 3-hour movie, but it's like that's what it is. You think about Warrior, like yeah, what's so good about Warrior at the end? It's like because if you love someone and you know, it's like all it is. It's like all these movies are about.
Yeah, and then like that line Kelly's talking about is also so good when James Hong and when she says it's her girlfriend, and like the look on his face.
Yeah,
I gotta say too that girl Becky, she didn't get a lot, but what she was given, she did a lot with. Because when he says girlfriend, and kind of like looks at her,
she has a great.
And she like her teared up thing, and then she says, "What did he say?" Because that's me all the time. It's just so good.
Gone Girl, all about love, you know?
Yeah.
Nick and
totally,
Amy.
Totally.
She loves him.
Yeah, all about love. Yeah. Those are some of my favorite lines. I think I wrote down a couple other ones that I thought were really funny. During that first like little bit of like the setup of when you're first learning about the other universe and like the first fight that they have in the IRS building, there's like the right after he's like, "You can live up to your ultimate potential. What do you want to do?" She's like, "Lie here." And I just thought it was funny because I'm like, oh yeah, Michelle Yeoh is like actually very funny. She has good comic timing. There's a part where right before she starts, or when Kehui Kwan's like fucking everyone up, there's a part where the guy's like, "Craig, no!" And then he's like, "Oh fuck!" And he just gets bodied after that. I thought it was funny because it was just like a dumb action movie line.
There was something funny about the security guard having his dick blurred out.
because
the movie's like pretty R-rated in many ways. Yeah. They could have just shown full frontal; it would have been fine. They could have just done it. But the fact that it's blurred makes it kind of funnier in some ways.
Yeah, and I think it would have been like too distracting. There's the line that's pretty funny is like, you know, here you're capable of anything because you're so bad at everything. It's like a pretty funny line. And then the other one that like got me was when they're like, I can't remember who says it, but it's just really quick. They say we're all useless on our own.
Yeah,
it's such a good line.
Well, I don't know, the rock sequence too is so good.
Yeah,
it's like it was like really like emotional. The rocks talking to each other.
Yeah,
there's no fucking sound or music. It's just words on a screen and two rocks, and it still gets
you. It works so well. And then even when they're like rolling down the hill during all of it, it's like, how is this working? How is it working?
Yeah, and that is like the thing about the movie. I mean, so a couple things I want to hit before we run out of time. The first one is, you know, this movie is so special because I think it's drawing inspiration from themes that we're all very familiar with, but it's reinventing them. And then, like we said, it's sticking the landing with a very traditional story. It feels like it's a story that's about everything, but also kind of about the simplest themes, right? So you talk about like The Matrix. You talk about that concept, and you're watching this, and there are themes that borrow from it, right? Like the sort of getting pilled thing, and it's like these different, you can download information essentially to be a different version of yourself and all that stuff. Like that's like straight out of it. But then you think about all of the fighting and all of the different, like the different films from different cultures that employed to make this movie. Mm-hmm. I think it's one of the things that's so special about this movie is that it's a great example of like you can repurpose concepts as much as you want. You can borrow because everything's been told before. And as long as you do it in a fresh way, it's going to seem like the most inventive movie you've ever seen. It doesn't bother me whatsoever, any of the Matrix shit, because it doesn't feel like it's the same thing. It's just a similar idea, just like every story.
Yeah, the Daniels were talking about how, when they had come up with this movie, it was before multiverse stuff started popping up all over the place. And like they stopped watching Rick and Morty because of it. And there was like a movie that they referenced that it made them mad when it came out. They were like, everyone's gonna think our stuff is just crappy or not interesting or not stolen or whatever. But that just leads to what you're talking about, where it's like, no, because it was done so well in such a fresh way and in such a relatable way. I don't know if I've ever been so blown away by a movie that is, like you said, so like simple but also so over the top that like I missed it the first time. I've never missed a movie I feel like I did like this one first time around.
Yeah, this movie took as much effort to like follow as any movie I can remember watching, really. Like it is a movie that it's rare that I would ever say this because I hate movies where like the premise behind it is like you have to watch it a second time to really get it.
You have to watch this movie, I think, twice.
But I do think that in this case it applies. And I think it's worth it in a way that most of the time when people say that, it's like you have to watch it a second time to like not focus on the things you didn't like about it the first time. That's usually what they mean. Mm-hmm. It's a movie that like they think is good and most people think is mediocre, and they tell you watch it again, still think it's funny, or watch it again. But that's not the case here. I definitely missed a lot of this movie the first time.
It's because the end of it like kind of opens your mind up, and then when you go back and watch it again, you get to realize like you don't get caught up in all the shit that's going on screen. You're kind of like looking at the bigger picture. Like, what's the point of this scene?
Yeah.
Oh, well, there's not really a point. It's just kind of supposed to be funny. Or it's supposed to kind of be kind of cool. It's supposed to be good action. It's like, well, what's the point of this scene? It's like, oh, that's the point of this scene, right? And it like hits you in the heart. It's just like it's really crazy because it's such a meta kind of experience that you're having with the movie that is also what the movie is all about, which is like, why is this movie so good? Is it because of all these crazy cool things in these universes and hot dog hands and the fighting? And it's like, no, it's because of like these people, these relationships, and how relatable they are.
Yeah, I think the other segment of the show that we often do is star profiles. And I feel like the most interesting one is definitely Michelle. That's the one that I think, just because especially her last few years have been so important.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the one that I would really focus on. And it's right. So this movie comes out, but preceding this, she's obviously got the role in Shang-Chi, which is a huge deal. And that's the biggest. I'm not mistaken in saying that is the biggest movie she's ever been in, right? Just from a scale
I'd
perspective.
say Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Yeah, well, that's definitely way better reviewed. I guess I more just mean
it
like
also won Best Picture, right?
Foreign film, best foreign film, probably, yeah. That's a fair point, and that's a long time ago, but like arguably in the top couple, and from a box office perspective, not even close, right? Like Shang-Chi is such a giant thing, so that happens. A couple years before that, it's Crazy Rich Asians, which is one of the highest grossing movies of the year that year. Mm-hmm. She's in Gunpowder Milkshake, I know, which was that Netflix movie, and I think there's one other. Yeah, you've got it pulled up here. There's one other significant
Boss Level.
movie. She is in Boss Level. Yeah, Last Christmas. Okay, so maybe the big ones that came to mind then were the big roles in Crazy Rich Asians and in Shang-Chi. And if you just think about somebody who's been around as long as she has and is as famous as she is, it's wild that this portion of her career is going to go down as the biggest portion of her career. Like, she's this far into the game, and she just starred in the Best Picture winner. She was one of the prominent roles in a friggin' Marvel movie, and then she's in Crazy Rich Asians, which was like the box office smash of that year, like the unexpected box office win. It's just kind of an amazing part of her career to be watching. Yeah, Tomorrow Never Dies, says Harold. That's fair. Another big like box office movie. But
I mean, she's been in big movies for a very long time. I think that's the point, is that she's been in big movies for a long time, but she's never been able to be in a movie like this or be in this position in movies unless it was like an action movie or a kung fu movie or an Asian movie, you know. And then, you know, you look at Ke Huy Quan and Stephanie Hsu. I'm really excited to see what she does next. I really think she has... It's so hard because, you know, you look at people and you're like, oh, well, they'll win an Oscar in their career. That's why you can maybe sleep at night, is because Jamie Lee Curtis, who knows when she'll ever get another opportunity to win an Oscar. Whereas like Stephanie Hsu, if you look at what she does in this movie, she'll win an Oscar in her career. But it's like it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
When will there ever be another movie just like this? Well, there probably won't ever be. And specifically a role for her, like, I hope that this wasn't her chance to do it and then it passed her by because of the legacy of Jamie Lee Curtis. Because that's the other thing, is like Jamie Lee Curtis, she said about it. She knows she loves her nepotism. But like Stephanie Hsu is the opposite of that, you know? So, I'm excited to see where they all go. I wonder what like Kay's career is going to look like moving forward.
It's like he gets the life raft right now. Like that just happened, which, you know, you've all those interviews you guys have probably seen clips of from the last couple months. Like this was like an out of the blue type of resurgence. Like it just doesn't happen hardly.
He retired from acting like 20 years ago.
Yeah. And, but amazing and incredible performance. And you do wonder, I think he'll get some stuff. I think he'll be cast and stuff.
I think he definitely will. I mean, he's really good in this movie.
Yeah.
Really good.
The emotional moments too, not just like the comic. He's like funny, but he's like really good.
His like dramatic is the best.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, again, like you talk about that movie star life isn't good because of her. It's good because of him.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't speak a whole lot in that life.
You know, I was thinking about this after I was thinking about, because it won Best Picture. Can you remember being as satisfied with like a movie winning Best Picture? Like this for me is like one of the few times I can think of where I'm like, man, not only is the movie great, but it's great throughout, and it's an indie from A24 that manages to beat all these other movies. Like there's very rare times when a movie wins Best Picture where it's like that is clearly the winner, and like, and this had to fight pretty. I guess Parasite actually.
I was gonna say and it's like it's not because I'm Asian, but like Parasite truly, when I watched it, because I even watched Parasite again like just maybe a month or so ago, and I was like, wow. Yeah.
So good.
This movie is incredible. I wasn't blinded by the lights, like all the bright lights going on. I wasn't like sucked up in all the whatever, the conversation. It's just like, no, this movie is so singular and so incredible. I feel the same way about like that was, you know, that was my other thesis, and with the caveat of like wishing there could be two supporting, or that I actually thought that it should have won supporting, but it should have been Stephanie Hsu, is that like I can't think of the last time a movie won this many Oscars, and I just felt so okay with every one of them. The editing, writing, directing, and the acting. That's what it was. That's all it was. And it's like, I think they all deserve it, especially the lead. And like, when was the last time a movie won Best Picture and lead actress and lead actor, and I thought that was deserving, or like that even they were up for all three and I thought it was deserving? That's like pretty far and few between.
Well, this is again just like for the people that are like thinking about this and doing the math. I mean, even if you just go back a few years, you just rattle off the movies, and every one of these for me when I think about them is like, okay, like none of them are like so it's like it's like King's Speech, whatever. Mm-hmm. The Artist, nope. Mm-hmm. Argo, it's like fine, it's good. It's not like this. 12 Years a Slave, it's a good movie, hard to watch. Birdman, Spotlight, like Shape of Water, Green Book, like none of them. Like, I like a lot of those movies.
Yeah, I really like Spotlight and Shape of Water a lot.
Spotlight's like, I've rewatched that movie a ton, but it doesn't feel the same. It feels like a good story that is like well told with good actors, but we'll get another one of those just like it in a few years. That's about a different story with similarly good actors, and it will feel like watching it.
Yeah. Whereas another great director.
We're not going to get another movie like this. This is a unique piece of cinema that is very rare.
Okay, so the last thing before we get out of here, because we don't have a lot of time left, and this is a tough one. I'm kind of put you on the spot. And this is like just hypothetical, doesn't have to be specific, but like, what could you put these guys on, the Daniels on? Like, what is your did you think about like a dream project? Like, oh, if they directed the next Bond movie, you know, like that type of thing. And that's not what I want them to do, but like, what if it, you know, like what would that be? You know, video game adaptation. Like, what if they did a God of War movie? You know, that'd be kind of, who knows?
I think you have to assume that if you were going to try to employ the stuff that they were so good at in this movie, it would have to be something pretty wild. Like, I think you don't take advantage, because to shoot this movie and have this
Like,
movie,
what if they did Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness?
exactly, it's like you almost feel like it's got to be something that is employing that skill set, because the emotional stuff is great, but there's a lot of great directors who can do that. There's not a lot of great directors who can do what this movie did, that look like this and feel like this. So I don't know. It's probably something sci-fi again. It's taking advantage of that. I mean,
Yeah, they'd probably get a comic book movie, says Kelly. It looks like they're doing an episode of Star Wars Skeleton
yeah,
Crew.
I saw Skeleton Crew, and they were going to release some info on that. But
Even just like the makeup and the visuals, even just like her dragging her fingernails across the wall and it changing colors.
Yeah.
Like, just small things like that. Her makeup at the end is so, like, Stephanie Shu's makeup at the end is so cool and unique that, I could see them doing horror. Like a really good horror movie.
Or I was gonna say, you know what would be really cool, actually, like, if it would be cool to have them do something like, if they were gonna, because I know they're gonna make more Lord of the Rings movies and they want to bring Peter Jackson back, but like them doing something like that would be amazing. Like, if you take like a sci-fi story that is pretty self-serious and it's rooted in a world where like it wants you to take it seriously, and you just get a fresh voice that has a huge budget and can imagine doing all kinds of wild stuff and cool CGI. I think my biggest issues with The Hobbit is that they weren't fresh feeling at all. They were extremely like stale, and they just felt like trying to take the exact same thing that worked
duplicitous
from 10 years earlier. And I think if you want to make, you want to reinvent and take, like, that's how you do it. You take somebody who has this kind of vision. So yeah.
Ooh, let them reboot Nightmare on Elm Street.
That'd be nuts.
That would be. I think that's I think horror, and then to specify Nightmare would be amazing, because the Dreamland, that world, mixing the two, they could do a great job with that. So, all right, guys, I hope you loved our discussion on Everything Everywhere All at Once as much as we love talking about it. If you haven't seen it, go watch it a couple times. If you've seen it and you didn't really like it, hopefully our conversation made you reassess, or at least maybe want to revisit and to get a better idea, because like we both said, I think this movie really deserves a second plus viewing, and it gets better with every single one.
And we will not be here next week.
Nope.
But stay tuned. I believe we'll be back probably the next week, if not the one after that. I can't quite remember what the schedule looks like, but we are taking the week off next week. We will post on the Patreon. We will post on the YouTube the next movie that we're doing as soon as we decide on it, and so you guys can get hyped. I'm glad we're getting to talk about great movies, and big time thank you and shout out to all of the generals in the Action Army. It's a big time salute. Call sign Kilmer, Quiz Show, Public Enemy #1, Kaiju, ACP, Robin, Kimura, Moses, Galactus, Bartab, Party J, 24601. Dude, we're so good at that now.
We are very good at that.
I know, I can feel the harmony.
Yeah.
I know what you're going to be at.
Felt it.
Amazing. Desperado, The Slap, and Godfather. Big time salute to all you guys. Thank you so much for being here.
Asking when's the next hour long. I don't know. It's been like medium interest in the general bunkers as of late. So let us know if you guys want us to do another hour long on our Patreon, and we could do one.
Sounds good. All right.
See you guys.
Bye, guys.